Why is a movie that made $500 million in the theater hated so much 20 years later? We'll discuss that and more next. When Signs hit theaters in 2002, audiences were captivated by its suspenseful atmosphere, masterful direction, and the spiritual undertones that Shyamalan wove into the story, such as luck, coincidence, and miracles. As years pass, the film's reputation has seen a shift. Many now point to glaring plot holes and inconsistencies that weren't as heavily scrutinized upon its release. Signs was written, directed, and produced by M. Night Shyamalan. Mel Gibson plays Father Graham Hess, a former priest who lost his faith after his wife died in a car accident. Originally, Graham was written to be an older man. Paul Newman was offered the role, and when he declined, it was offered to Clint Eastwood. The role of Graham's brother Merrill was played by Joaquin Phoenix, who was hired just 1 week before filming began. Mark Ruffalo was originally cast, but had to back out at the last minute because of a tumor behind his right ear that needed to be removed. So about halfway through the film, and the aliens are coming down and they're starting this invasion. Merrill asks Graham, what's he think about all this? And Graham says that there are two people in this world. There's group A, who they believe they see signs and they see miracles. And whether it's good or bad, they feel like there's someone is going to protect them or lead them through this. And group B, they don't believe in that miracles. They see these signs and it's like people just get lucky or they're unlucky. There are no coincidences. Things happen. And regardless of the outcome, you're on your own. And that's his position. He's obviously group B going into this. But by the end of the film, I think he has a change of heart where he starts seeing things more as miracles because he's starting to notice things. And for example, his wife dies and her last words to him is see and tell Merrill to swing away. He eventually thought, well, her brain is wired and she's remembering some random baseball game. But as it turns out, when these aliens are in their house, he sees a bat. He tells Merrill to swing away and Merrill swings away. And had that doctor not have fallen asleep, hit his wife, Merrill would never have come to live with him. Merrill was a minor league baseball player who hit home runs, but he also struck out too much, so he could never advance his career. Had he been able to put the ball in play a little bit more, he wouldn't have been there to live with him. If his daughter
Sounds like Javi Baez.
It's very much Javi Baez. If his daughter hadn't left glasses of water laying around the house and Merrill was able to use that water to help defeat the alien, and his son has asthma. If his son didn't have asthma, he would have inhaled that poison and died. But because he had asthma, his lungs were closed. And Mel Gibson even says at the end, it didn't get into his lungs. They were closed. He goes, this can't be luck. This has to be something else. And that's where it kind of turns into maybe these are the signs. And there is somebody looking out for us. And these were miracles. So that's sometimes you just got to think, what kind of person are you? And what do you think, when you see these things? So what do you guys think?
I think that was kind of the point of the movie. I read that M. Night was trying to contrast those two views, people who believe everything's random and people who believe that God is actually guiding events in life for a purpose. I think where people struggle with the film, though, is that it's only presented in extremes. It's hard to tell, does M. Night really believe that? Or if he said he was contrasting these views, it makes sense that he would just put the two extremes on screen. So I kind of, on the one hand, like the end, how all of these events come together and every little detail had a purpose. But I find it unrealistic at the same time. I do believe God can intervene, but I also think a lot of things are random. But I don't know that the movie was necessarily trying to show us what reality was. It was just to maybe contrast those two views. And I think he was successful in that. But if you take it too far, I think that's where some people start to think the end was a little cheesy.
Yeah. Doug, what do you think?
Yeah, I liked it and everything, but I was doing research on other things, but I did run across this one theory that kind of works into that. Throughout the entire movie, they're watching the news. They're watching TV. They're talking about what they're seeing on TV and everything like that. At no point did they talk about ships coming down. All they talked about was, it seems these things are staying away from water. There's a theory out there that these weren't aliens, but they were actually demons attacking. Now, I'm not saying it's a great theory, but it's kind of interesting to think about it that way, that this might have been you can see it more of an attack on Earth from below instead of above, which meant God had to get more involved, or however the miracles came about. And if you believe in that, God knew this was going to happen all the time. So that's why he gave the boy asthma. That's why he let the girl be weird and leave things everywhere. That's why he had Joaquin, just be a swinger. That's all he does, is get up there and swing. Didn't feel right not to swing.
Yeah.
That's why he did all this stuff. So this family could survive this attack. So again, I'm not saying it's a great theory, but it's something I read online. I thought was at least a little interesting.
It's interesting, definitely.
Another reason people may have soured on M. Night movies is originally he was billed as the master of horror. I mean, his first 3 movies were major successes, but that started to wane after a while, starting with The Village, when people didn't find the twist to be convincing or maybe even ridiculous. And in hindsight, when people watch some of the earlier movies like Signs, they start to see maybe some of the cracks. Maybe the movies are trying to be too clever. Some of what they do is really cool, but there's a moment when Mel Gibson's character is in the basement and the aliens are upstairs, and they're trying to figure out how the aliens are going to get down into the basement to get them, because they're brilliant strategists. Well, Mel Gibson's looking around and he says, "Oh, they used to pour coal in this basement. There's a coal chute down here." And they start looking for the coal chute, feeling for air, and they feel it over to this big grate where the alien's hand comes out. It's a great scene, but this is Mel Gibson's house. Does he really not know where his own coal chute is in his own basement? So I thought that was funny. However, I did enjoy the movie, so it didn't really spoil it for me. But it is one of those things that stands out to me now and years later after watching it again.
That scene kind of threw me off, even today when I watched it again, where it's in the dark and they're looking around and I feel the air, and they put the flashlights together and the boy is just already like kind of standing there just in the dark. And I always just thought it looked a little weird. Like he couldn't say, "Hey, I feel it behind me," or whatever. But it does pay off a little bit because, he gets grabbed by a camouflaged alien hand, which was kind of neat. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's such an amazing scene. Leave the build-up behind, the kid's standing there, something's going to happen. And it was one of the bigger jump scares of my life, because my life watching movies and stuff, because I think I was expecting something bigger. I was waiting for the coal chute to blow out and there'd be 2 of them sitting there, and it's like, oh, what are they going to have to fight? I was getting ready for this to turn into a little bit of an action type movie almost, but it was the payoff was so good, because it wasn't that, waiting for something and then that little hand just jumped up and grabbed him, and boom, they dropped the flashlight, and now you've got a good 10, 15 seconds for your imagination to explode. You are now the director of the movie for the next 10, 15 seconds. What's happening? How do they get that closed? How do they get, people, the hand out? Did they get in a little bit? Did they push him out? There was so much going on in that 10, 15 seconds where it was literally just showing a flashlight on the ground, which made that one of the more intense parts of the movie. And to have a little bit of absurdity that he didn't know exactly where the coal chute was, I'm okay with that, because you got a great payoff right after that. And I had fun with that scene.
I did like that camera shot when they dropped the flashlight. That was a very cool perspective. And that was something that shows M. Night's talent as a director.
People don't use nothing enough. And the way I say that is, that 10, 15 seconds on that flashlight in the morning. If you remember, they're like, "What's happening? Is everything done?" And Joaquin Phoenix's character walks up the stairs. Now, this is a very still shot. He literally just put a camera on a tripod, pointed up a staircase. No one touch it. And he walks up slowly. And then he goes around the corner. No music, no sound, just deadness for a good 5 to 7 seconds. And the whole time you're just sitting there holding on, the first time you see it, just gripping the pads and everything like that. And then he just slips around. Everything's good. Come on up, But again, that 5 to 7 seconds of nothingness. Let your mind just run. And it's like, what's going to happen next? Is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? Oh, nothing's happening. Well, that was kind of cool. Mm-hmm. So I think he did a really good job of that, with just showing nothing and letting the audience just think for a little bit. Because I don't care what you throw up on the screen, you give me 10 seconds to think of something, I'll probably come up with something scarier in my mind in some cases, or, just 10 different things that could happen. And it's always fun to find out what does. So it was a cool part of the movie.
Sometimes less is more.
Absolutely. All right. Let's get controversial. All right, so if you walk up to anybody on the street that's 20 years old or older and ask them, who's the most popular movie critic? 90% of people will say Roger Ebert. Okay? He's been doing the movie reviews since the 60s. He had the most popular movie review show from 1975 to 1999. Everyone knows this dude. And when this movie came out, he gave it 4 stars. Out of 4 stars. Meaning he loved the movie. You couldn't give it much more praise. He talked about how great the acting was. He talked about how great the story was. He hit everything and said it was an amazing movie. And I would say most people from 2002 probably said the same thing. But right around the mid-2000s, for some strange reason, people started hating the movie. Why is that? Was it because maybe audiences were a little more mature? Maybe they saw things the 3rd, 4th, 5th viewing that they didn't see in the first one. Or maybe we'll come up with some more ideas next week. Let's talk about it then.
But a similar franchise has almost replaced Signs as a new modern horror masterpiece. What's that film? Watch this video next.